No, we didn't.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. It is October 10th.
My goodness.
We are in the month of harvest, October 10th. And our topic today is share the dream. So we have a multiple topic today. Actually, I want to include abundance and prosperity because it is the time of gathering the harvest. And yet we're talking about sharing the dream as or then the topic Bob and I gave it was the care and feeding.
The proper care and feeding of a dream.
Proper care and feeding of a dream. Yes, indeed. Okay. So, but let me start by reading an opening thought and prayer by Ernest Holmes. It's called God Lives in Me and Enlarges My Life. This life within me, being God, did not begin and it cannot end. Hence, I am immortal and eternal. I can never be less, but must forever be more myself as this life within me unfolds through my experience, through my gathering of knowledge and accumulation of wisdom. I recognize the omnipresence and I acknowledge it. I prosper in all my affairs. Perfect success is mine. All the mistakes I have ever made are wiped out. Ooh, that's a nice thought, isn't it? All the mistakes I've ever made are wiped out. And today, the business of living is the activity of God within me. Giving, I receive, and receiving, I give out again, thus increasing the divine bounty that meets me at every turn. God within me creates every circumstance and situation I have ever experienced. This is the prayer that you can say with me. I'll say that first line again. God within me creates every circumstance and situation I have ever experienced. They are the fruits of my thoughts. By my right thinking and right use of this law of liberty, I allow my imagination to enlarge my experience. The life principle within me responds with a greater abundance, harmony, and good flowing to me. Like a horizon where the earth and sky appear to meet, this apparent end continually opens up a wider expanse to me. This is my concept of God, the unlimited creator of all experience. God lives in me and enlarges my life. And so it is. Yes. And when I chose that writing, it was actually yesterday's writing from 365 by Ernest Holmes. I thought of that prayer of Jabez. It was made popular by a book from a Protestant minister a few years ago, maybe a decade ago. And everywhere you turned, you heard about the prayer of Jabez. And, in our Christian origins, most of us were taught that money is the root of all evil, or the love of money. And it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. And so most of us thought, "Ooh, it's dangerous to be rich. We better stay humble and poor." And those thoughts get deep into our consciousness and are hard to eradicate, even when you know better and think you know better. As a conscious thinking adult, it's still hard to get rid of. But this prayer of Jabez is a perfect example in the Old Testament. It's from 1 Chronicles, and that's in chapter 4. I believe it's 8 and 9, or 9 and 10. So what it says in the Living Bible, it's a little easier to understand this. Jabez is praying to the God of Israel. "Oh, that you would wonderfully bless me and help me in my work. Please be with me in all that I do and keep me from all evil and disaster." And God granted him his request. So this is a prayer asking for abundance. "Oh, that you would wonderfully bless me and help me in my work." Actually, the original in King James says, "and to enlarge my boundary, to enlarge my borders." And it says, "and God granted him his wishes." So I think it's a good example for us in this time of harvest, in this time of abundance, of bringing in the abundance and the harvest. to think about enlarging our life, to think about enlarging our boundaries, and knowing that this is not, it's not a thou shalt not, it's okay to ask and know that God wants you to be successful. And in this also, our theme for today, which is talking about our dreams, and we want to talk about your personal dreams and also those of our movement. I know that for 40 years that I've been in this teaching, people get very embarrassed when anybody wants to ask them about what this teaching is about, because they kind of feel like it's a gimme God movement. I learned the principles so that I can do affirmative prayer, so that I can improve my life. And it is so much more than that, but we have trouble melting it down and putting it into words. So one of the things that is encouraged in this talk, which is about sharing the dream, is to share our vision as an organization. Our vision is that we see a world that works for everyone. Very simply, a world that works for everyone. Now, what the heck does that mean? Well, depending on where you are, it means different things. For us in this country, it means a reality where we have our races all be equal. Our Caucasian, our African Americans, our Hispanic Americans, our Asian Americans. We want equality of the races. We want peace on earth, and we want to be peacekeepers, and we want assistance for the poor and the needy. So all of those things are involved in a world that works for everyone. And when we first came up with this, I thought, wow, that is a lofty goal. Well, what is the purpose of having a goal that's not lofty? That's what we want. And that's easy for us to share with other people, that's what we stand for. And not only that, Bob and I were talking about other religions that stand for that and have no trouble sharing it. And that we know probably more than that, but we do know that the Baha'is and the Quakers stand for peace and just social justice,
And equality.
and particularly the Baha'is stress equality of the races, and all Baha'is are expected to actively work towards that goal, not just espouse it, but to actually work towards that goal. The Baha'is are a religion that began in Iran or Persia, although now they are persecuted if they live there. So most of them have left the country because they're not Muslim. They're persecuted because they're not Muslim. So they've left and they're all over the world now. But so we want to talk today about our own personal dreams, but also then the dreams of our movement and how to share that. Another Bible quote today, Proverbs 29:18. Proverbs is a lot of one of the wisdom chapters of the Bible. And it says, where there is no vision, the people perish. So it is good for us to have this vision, and it is good for us to share it.
And the question that I have for myself, and I started with some time ago, was how do I live my vision? Not just how do I have it, but how do I live it? And one of the exercises I do from time to time is I'll imagine myself buying a lottery ticket. And if I won somewhere between 40 and 50 and 60 and now $100 million that the numbers get up to, what would I do that's a reflection of the vision that I have and that I choose to live? And that could be a great exercise for you to narrow down what is it that I would do if I didn't have any limitations? Because what we don't realize is we're often living under the limitations that we have either self-imposed or we believe have been imposed on us, to the point where we actually lose our vision. And I thought to myself, if I won $40 million tomorrow, what would I do? I would want to spend probably most of my time supporting PBS, our centers for spiritual living, and playing for change. I would literally want to go on a world tour with them and sponsor them. So those are three things. And then I realized, and Judith mentioned, well, what about ecology? And I thought, I would want to do what I'm passionate about, that I really believe makes a difference, that I could live into. What is your vision? And can you live into it? Now, what do I do now? Every time I can, I post what they're playing, the
Playing
news,
for change.
playing for change, the latest recording. I make comments. I send them $10 a month, at least I was, and I'm gonna do that again to support them. What is the thing that you can do that supports your vision, however small it is, that you could increase as the opportunity for you to give increases? That's very
We
different.
also tithe as an organization to our central organization.
Yeah, that's true.
Our
And
Center for Spiritual Living Palm Beach is tithes to our home office because they support us and giving us class material to teach and just lots and lots of ways.
and we
So
also sponsor public radio,
we
public
we
television.
personally
Yeah,
tithe,
to- yeah.
sponsor, send money to
So-
NPR.
So it's easier if you have a vision that you're living to increase its reach than it is to have a vision that's on hold because it doesn't seem like a very practical thing to do. And so what I'm suggesting is that you look into your own experience and ask yourself, what is it that I could be, that is my vision? How am I living it now? It just may be a post every now and then on Facebook or someplace else. And with all of the stuff I keep hearing about Facebook and the horrors that people are experiencing through the algorithms, I guess a positive post would be helpful. I guess a
Yeah,
positive
and
post can make a
I don't
difference.
ever get any of those because I do not post nor do I respond to
Yeah.
political posts. So I get less and less of them. My Facebook has no
Right.
has no controversial things on it unless they're spiritual, maybe.
I do know that I never ever have posted a request for Asian women who were interested in older men, but I keep getting them. But
Well, I must say what I don't like about it is that my posts keep getting narrow and narrower and narrow. I'm hearing from fewer and fewer people. But
oh, yeah.
yeah, and I don't like that. There are a lot of things I don't like about what Facebook has done.
But I don't want to get stick it off on Facebook.
Right.
But the bottom line for each of us today that I wanted to focus on today was, what is the vision that you have, and how are you able to, and have you been able to live into it, to express it? I realize part of the vision you have has to have a passion. And I realize that even on a tired day when nothing is going well, I'm still passionate about music and about the arts, and the belief that they're an essential component of our daily living.
Part of his best days is when I say, Bob, would you go find a piece of music for this or that? He comes in, he just gets swept away on YouTube listening to music. I should do that every day, Bob.
really. Would you find me
Go
a piece
find
of-
a piece of music for us.
Would you find a piece of music, Bob, that'll change your mood? Yeah, okay, yeah. I could be in a good mood in 30 seconds with the right music, and with the wrong music, it takes forever. But it's something you need to be passionate about, and then ask yourself, well, I love what I can't think of his name now, a great therapist once said, what's the least you can do in favor of the vision you have? What's the least you could do? Do that.
Was that Albert Ellis?
Albert Ellis, yeah. What's the least you could do in favor of the outcome you would like to see? If I want to see more music of the kind that I love and appreciate, and I want more people to be involved in it, what's the least I could do? I could listen to it. I could then retransmit it. I could send them $10 a month. What else could I do? And so you're living your vision. It doesn't say you have to live your vision full out. It doesn't say that anywhere. But what I believe to be true is many of us have had a vision for a very long time that we've been sitting on because the time hasn't been right to launch any part of it. And what that actually does is it develops cynicism and bitterness and a sense of failure that is doing nothing in favor of the thing that is most important to you.
I'd like to make a point though that almost seems to be the opposite of that.
Oh,
Is
no.
if you're, they're both the truth. If your vision or if your dream, as we're calling it, is so large that you cannot imagine how it could possibly happen, good on you. If it requires divine intervention, good,
Mhm.
because divine intervention can happen. As a matter of fact, when it's called upon is when it does happen. And so don't worry about having a vision like a world that works for everyone. That seems too big. I can't do that. I can't make that happen. Good. Then we call upon the divine to also make it happen.
Well, it's a perfect match. What's the biggest thing you can imagine, and what's the least you could do in favor of it? You've got it covered at both ends. The least you could do would be to say something. I was talking earlier to one of the members that's attending today, and she was saying that she bought a couple more copies of the little book that I wrote. and
Diary of a Mindful
diary.
Dog.
Yeah, and I thought, God, it keeps giving. When you give something, it keeps giving. It keeps
Yeah.
creating. It's doing something. And this is a person who's helping me create a world that works for everybody through one small gesture. And so as we do the smallest thing we can do in favor of a huge thing we'd like to see happen, that huge thing becomes more possible.
Exactly. So, and I know many of you have your stories about how things have happened that you just can't even imagine how they did. But we put it in mind, we think about it, we visualize it, we anticipate it, and then we turn it over. We
You
just
see,
turn it
the
over.
thing we're talking about, though, that I think we haven't spoken to yet, that's really powerful, is that we're not working alone.
Exactly.
See, we often think when we have a vision and we want the
We have to
vision to
do it
come
all.
true,
Mhm.
we're sitting here by ourselves. And the book is a good reminder. I published, or the book that I wrote got published. It's having its own life and it continues. The life of your vision will continue to the extent that you support it, and it is not for you to do by yourself. You're not alone in this. And so I think the biggest thing about the vision that's important, just to know that you're working in a community, even if it's a community of spirit that's invisible to you, you're working in a community of energy that wants for you to have the very best that's possible.
So I have a couple of quotes from Martin Luther King, who was a great one, who had a great vision, he has some ideas that all of us can use and bring it down to, well, what's the least you can do? He says, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Everyone can be great because anybody can serve, meaning serve others. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree in your writing to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. So that's also a good question. You might ask, how am I serving humanity? How am I serving others?
When you said serve, I couldn't help but think that sometimes all we can do is set the table. And when we set the table, the food that's available will be served on that setting. If we don't set the table because we haven't seen the food, then where do we put the food when it's served, when it comes to us? And I think what I'm asking you and me to do is to start setting the table. Set the table for a banquet. Imagine that the banquet is right now in the oven being baked, and you don't have to be the cook or the chef. You simply have to set the table with the expectation that it's going to be a banquet, an enormous and wonderful meal.
So in another small way, you can reach out to, Bob is almost always coming home from work and finding me on the phone,
Yes.
staying in touch with a relative that's become ill, or a friend that's having a birthday or something. That's also how we
Yeah.
serve other. We serving the bond. This one particular relative that I reached out to yesterday had a real health challenge recently. And we had a real disagreement over the last political situation that shall remain nameless. And I just so did not want it to ruin the relationship, the friendship, but it almost did. And I set some limits to what I wanted sent to me. And any rate, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to just ignore all that and reach out and say, I care about you. I love you. I hope you're getting better. And those are servicing those bonds. And you serve humanity by doing that, keeping in touch with your friends and relatives.
It's funny, years ago when I was studying in the psychology, and we had a person who was particularly skilled at learning all about the kind of nonverbal communication. And he referred to a woman taking the lint off of a man's shirt, and it was servicing the bond. And we service the bond in lots of different ways. Sometimes it's removing the lint, sometimes it's removing the blind spot, sometimes it's adding to that person's life. But servicing the bond can be done in a lot of ways. And you talk about that on a phone call, that's servicing the bond.
It is.
And if you service the bond, then the bond gets stronger and it gives back.
Mhm. It does. And it builds peace on earth,
Yeah.
it builds peace on earth. So speaking of peace, Martin Luther King also said, One day we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal we seek, but it is a means by which we arrive at that goal. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means. So that's a goal I'd like to see for our country that has taken on the role of peacekeeper in the world. But we've accepted that role by having the biggest military complex ever seen in the world. I'd like to see it done by other means. So
So I want to go back and touch on another piece. When I say what is the least you can do, and a lot of us, for instance, for me, for Judith and I together, we make a small contribution to PBS every month, a small contribution. There's a tendency, though, to think of it as small rather than a contribution.
mhm,
To think of it as life changing would be more useful than to think of it as, well, I wish we
mhm,
could give more. And so think of the gift that you're giving, whether it's servicing the relationships that are around you, as a big deal, not as a small deal. And allow
mhm.
yourself to enter into that with more of you and with a greater appreciation that you are the reason. I hear that, and they just had a fundraiser, PBS just did, and they said, it's people, you're the people that make this happen. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I didn't contribute anywhere near as much as, but then I had to go back and say, wait a second, my contribution is part of the voice that is creating the world we're living in. Don't allow your voice to be diminished because it isn't very loud.
Exactly. So I think we've shared lots of ways that you can nourish your own dream. Don't be afraid of that having it be too big. Don't be afraid of thinking you have to do it yourself. And don't be afraid to share a big dream with others. I think it's a wonderful way to grow our movement just by telling them what our vision for the world is, a world that works for everyone. That can be a wonderful explanation of who and what we are and what we're doing.
Well, actually, and if that doesn't exist, there isn't any reason for us to exist.
Exactly.
I mean, we are
Exactly.
really a function of the vision we have. And so, yeah, don't be afraid of it.
John Adams says, if your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and become more, you are a leader. So we know that you operate in that role as well. And so now I think we ought to end with a closing.
Well, we're going to end with, before that, we're going to talk just briefly about, for those of you that are involved and want to support us, feel free to go to our website, and which we have.
Yes, indeed.
And share that to you, because many of you that watch us on a regular basis don't know how we do this, or don't know how we manage to continue on. And we continue on by your support. And one of the ways that you can donate
Is
is
to
on our
go to our
website.
website, which is cslpalmbeaches.org. And then click on this ways to donate button.
And
When you do, these
any
come up.
gift you give is supporting the vision that we have and the vision that you have that supports you as well. So, we really are in this together as best we possibly can be, and as big a way as possible as well.
And so right now, let's say with me this affirmation of prosperity. As you share, anywhere you share, with any, our sharing with NPR as an investment, our sharing with Playing for Change is an investment. If you share with us or any other spiritual organization, that's an investment. So you say, my investment today is made with the full realization that God is the source of my supply and returns it to me enriched and multiplied. And so it is. And so what that means is, as I give, I do receive.
Indeed. So we're going to switch from the recording to the listening part, where all of you can enjoy the piece of music that I selected for this week.
Well, first of all, we are going to stop the recording.
Yes.